There are those whose horizons are limited by the present and its problems. And there are those whose horizons are boundless by the future with all of its potentials. It is the latter that reflects the vision of the founders of Salam, which has become a shining example for what an American Islamic center should be. This is Salam of today. It is unique in many ways.
In February, we celebrated the past. In June, we celebrated the legacy of partnerships in Salam with a focus on the role of women. And today, we celebrate the future, building a vision for the Center of Higher Islamic Learning. We have asked folks from inside and outside the community to share their thoughts with us, and I will briefly introduce them as I ask them to come up. After the conclusion of the program, we will show the 25th anniversary video for those who would like to stay and watch it, either again because it's really a great show, or maybe for the first time. So we begin tonight's program with a reading from the Quran provided by Imam Azeez. And after the reading, I have also asked him to stay at the podium and to share his vision of the center. So Imam.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful night to remember that Salam has been around for 25 years. And I would like to recite a few verses from the Quran, and the surah of the chapter that I will recite from is called Al-Furqan, and in English that means the criterion. So I will recite this in Arabic, and then I will read the translation, after which I will just speak for 25 minutes. 3 minutes, I think. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وعباد الرحمن الذين يمشون على الأرض هونا وإذا خاطبهم الجاهلون قالوا سلاما والذين يبيتون لربهم سجدا وقياما والذين يقولون ربنا اصرف عنا عذاب جهنم إن عذابها كان غراما إنها ساءت مستقرا ومقاما والذين إذا أنفقوا لم يسرفوا ولم يقتروا وكان بين ذلك قواما والذين لا يدعون مع الله إلها آخر ولا يقتلون النفس التي حرم الله إلا بالحق ولا يزنون ومن يفعل ذلك يلقى أثاما يضاعف له العذاب يوم القيامة ويخلد فيه مهانا إلا من تاب وآمن وعمل عملا صالحا فأولئك يبدل الله سيئاتهم حسنات وكان الله غفورا رحيما. This is the translation of God's word. For true servants of the Most Gracious are only they who walk gently with humility on earth, and who, whenever the foolish address them, reply with words of peace. And those who remember their Sustainer far into the night, prostrating themselves and standing, and who pray, O our Sustainer, avert from us the suffering of hell. For verily the suffering caused by it is bound to be torment dire. Verily how evil an abode and a station. And who, whenever they spend on others, are neither wasteful nor nearly. But remember that there is always a just mean between those two extremes. And who never invoke any imaginary deity side by side with God, and do not take any human being's life, the life which God has willed to be sacred, otherwise than in pursuit of justice, and do not commit adultery. And know that he who commits these sins, aught thereof, shall not only meet with a full requital, but shall have his suffering double on resurrection day. For on that day he shall abide in ignominy. Except, however, shall be they who repent and attain to faith and do righteous deeds. For it is they whose erstwhile bad deeds God will transform into good ones, seeing that God is indeed much forgiving, a dispenser of grace. There's more beautiful verses in this surah that I wanted to share with you, but I will keep it at this so that I'm able to meet the 4-minute requirement that Sister Ann gave me. And there's only one reason for which I actually recited these verses tonight, and that is to extract that word from Surah Al-Furqan, one of the words I recited tonight, and that is يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا. The true believers of God are ones that walk the earth with humility. And if there is one quality of ethics in Islam that inspires me and compels me to think about myself and my life and who I am and what I do, it is this quality of humility, one that I struggle so hard to personally abide by. And the theme of tonight's event is to remember 25 years of the existence of Salam. And Sister Ann is asking me to share with you my vision about Salam in 2.5 minutes. Which, if I were to think of anything, of any clever word to say, of any 2 or 3 sentences I could put together in order to impress you with a little bit of eloquence on a Friday night, I will not be able to find something that describes Salam, its men and women, its brothers and sisters, its management team, its mission in this community and the world, and vision for the future than the very quality of humility. It is something that I was inspired with, is something that we continue to inspire people. It is very hard in this day and age for people not to assume the upper higher moral ground and pass judgment upon others and look down upon them. I learned that lesson the hard way years and years ago, and I preach it every single day. I thank God for what we have achieved. I can't put it in better, more eloquent words. I thank God for what we have done. I thank Him for offering guidance, for using us and utilizing us and taking advantage of our presence here to do some of His good work on this earth. That's how I define my mission. I thank Him for choosing me and for selecting me, for making me among one of those who bring quality to people's lives. I don't know what happens in the future, and I don't know how that future is going to be written. But I know one thing for sure. If Salam and the men and women that made it happen and brought it to existence are not mentioned profusely in history books, it would be extremely unfair. But history is never fair to anyone. I look at the little children, including my own kids, and I'm always visited with these really strange ideas, right? Who's going to be a congressman? And who's going to be a senator? And who's going to be a governor? Are we going to hear about the very first Muslim congressman? Well, we've already heard of that. But someone was actually born Muslim, not a convert. Is that kid going to come from Sacramento or not? The very first Muslim governor, the very first California State Assembly member. Is that kid going to come from the Salam community? It could be actually one of the youth, mashallah, that are in this room. It's interesting. My cousin bought this really fancy camera, and I'll end, inshallah, with this story. And was taking photos, so I took a photo of my office at home, right? I have a desk and a couple of bookshelves, and it was really looked like a professional photograph. So I took that and I posted on Facebook, right? And if you've ever been to my office at home, I have the world map right in front of me, on the wall. And so one of my non-Muslim friends on Facebook sent me a message and basically told me that one of his friends read his comment on that particular photograph of the world map on the wall, and his comment was, why does he have a map of the world on his wall? Is that part of his world domination plan? That was serious. He was serious. Right? Initially, I thought it was a joke. So I said, no, he was kidding. Right? No, he said he was serious. I mean, would you please take that photo down? I'm not able to justify this photo to my friends. And you know me when I develop an attitude. So what I said is that, so he's scared that I have a photograph of the world on my wall, thinking that I have a plan for world domination. Wait until I run for Congress. Thank you so much.
And now I'd like to ask Brother Farouk Saeed to come up. He is the chairman of Salam's Board of Trustees, and I've asked him to come and welcome you as well as offer his thoughts on our Center of Higher Islamic Learning.
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everyone, and first of all, it's a great pleasure to see so many of you out here tonight. Thank you for your commitment. It really takes a commitment to be out here on a Friday evening when we have other things in life. I'll be sharing a few of my thoughts with you about this center and also what I feel we can accomplish as human beings from this center. First of all, let me tell you that I was honored and privileged to be part of the project team for this project. And the experience that I had and the memories that I have, I will cherish them for my lifetime. If I look at this center, I see three areas where we can provide learnings to our community, to ourselves and the community. The first and foremost is a prayer hall upstairs. Many of you saw this a few minutes ago. This prayer hall is where we have our spiritual uplifting takes place. We enjoy our Fridays more because we have more space. Friday khutbahs from Imam Azeez. We also enjoy our khatiras in Ramadan and other events. A few years ago, this was just a dream. And I am proud and extremely excited to tell you that we are gratified to have this prayer hall where we truly enjoy our worship. Then we have this auditorium, which we have been using since it was opened up for a variety of events, seminars, to really educate our community and also to really tackle social, cultural, and societal issues that have never really been tackled in a masjid environment. And rather than sweeping those issues under the rugs, we like to tackle them head on, and I really see us doing more of that. And I am really happy with the Religious Social Services team that has been putting together these events for the last couple of years, and I think they are only starting on this journey and probably more to come in the future. In the prayer hall and in this auditorium, you listen and you hear from people, and you are the audience. But if you want to learn for yourself, if you want to take control of what really is on your mind to learn about, then we have the Sharif Family Community Library. Library will be fully functional soon. You can go to the library and you can learn whatever you feel like you want to learn about at your own pace. As we really grow our learning and further our learning from this facility, I personally feel that we should not lose focus of the fact that whatever we learn, we need to practice it. We need to bring it to practicality, execution, and implementation in our lives so we can become a better human being. We can learn all in theory that we want. Unless that theory is put into practice, learning or even higher learning pretty much fails. We must learn how to walk our talk and practice what we preach. In Islam, we all know there are 5 pillars to Islam. For the benefit of my friends who may not know, those 5 pillars are: believe there is no God but God and Muhammad was his last messenger. You pray 5 times a day. You fast in Ramadan. You pay 2.5% in zakat, which is charity, and you go for pilgrimage once a year in Mecca. There are also 5 evils that really can destroy our human character that we must be aware of, and we must try to eliminate them from our lives. I call them BASLJ, and let me tell you what they are. B stands for backbiting, A stands for arrogance, S stands for selfishness, L stands for lying, and J stands for jealousy. We must do a jihad on these evils to eradicate them from our lives, and take advantage of this learning center to really learn and grow us as human beings. And I'll end with this thought here. In Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He might be willing to forgive us on hukuk Allah, which means God's rights on human being, but He will not forgive hukuk al-ibad, which is the right of one human being on the other. And in order for us to be that human being and be able to achieve that, and in order for us to be able to be that person that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted us to be, we must practice what we learn from this center. Brothers and sisters, on behalf of Salam Board of Trustees, I welcome you here and thank you for your support.
We would not have this center if it were not for our next speaker. Brother Javed Iqbal chaired the Phase 3 committee during the construction process, and he's the only one here tonight who I'm allowing a longer time period so that he can really give great detail to explain the philosophy behind the center. If what he has to say inspires or moves you, he has actually also provided me a multiple-page document that has quotes from the Quran and some of his other philosophical points that he used in creating his speech. And we have a few copies over here, so if you are interested, come and see me after the lecture. And I will not take any more time, and please, Brother.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Salam has come a long ways in the last 25 years, thanks to the vision and dedication of the founders of Salam. The question now is, what should be our vision going forward? And the answer is, what vision can be better than the vision and wisdom of our Creator? We just have to comprehend it and apply it. Before I expand on it, let me first say that I am not a scholar of Islam, and therefore I am a little apprehensive in putting my point across. However, my talk is based on targeted studies of the Quran, works of many contemporary scholars, Muslims and non-Muslims, including Dr. Muhammad Iqbal, lectures given in the 1930s titled as Reconstruction of Religious Thoughts in Islam. And by the way, Dr. Iqbal does not relate to me. As a Muslim, it troubles me, like many of us, to see 1.6 billion of us on a downward trajectory all across the world for several hundred years, for a variety of reasons. One reason being the way our religion is portrayed and practiced. I will therefore restrict my assertions only in the context of a religion in Islam. For the last 500 years, Islam as a religion has been portrayed very narrowly, just a collection of don'ts and do's to regulate human conduct, adherence to 5 pillars of Islam, rituals and symbolism, while significantly de-emphasizing the central objective of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala underlying the creation of humans. Why God created humans? There are several verses in the Quran which state this central objective, inspire, motivate, and invite humans to ponder, contemplate on the observable aspect of the reality, to know Him better, develop reverence for Him, acquire knowledge, and do good for the humanity. Allah created humans as the best of all His creations. Gift of intellect was the differentiating factor. We were ordained to use this intellect and fulfill our obligation toward the central objective of discovering Allah's universe and the nature of things on planet Earth and beyond, also use this intellect to discover the empirical principle invented by our Creator that run this most beautiful, most intricate, most balanced, and ever-expanding universe. In order for us to undertake this intellectual work, Allah bestowed upon us all the necessary freedoms. He is our Creator. He knows best. In His wisdom, He also regulated our freedoms and prescribed limits on our code of conduct. These limits were designed so that humans can execute to the central objective optimally in harmony with each other, with their surroundings, and in obedience and submission to Him. However, for the last 500 plus years, we have been stuck on just enforcing these limits and regulations, sometimes suffocatingly narrowed, and we call this as our religion in practice, while we set aside the required intellectual work of discovering Allah's universe and acquiring knowledge as a worldly act. Brothers and sisters, all knowledge emanates from the same divine source. That is the doctrine of Tawheed. There is no God but God, and therefore there is no knowledge but knowledge. Therefore, there is no such thing as worldly knowledge or religious knowledge. It's all divine. Yes, how that knowledge is used could be worldly, to amass wealth for the detriment of others, to harm fellow human beings, or harm an environment, and so many other things. In other words, what is the underlying paradigm? Is it divine or worldly? Early Muslims understood this. They presented to the rest of the world a shining example of our code of conduct and of our intellectual and scientific work, which in fact laid the foundation for further discoveries for the rest of the world. Their conceptual understanding of the Quran engendered in them a feeling of reverence for the actual and ultimately made them the founder of modern science. But for the last 500 years, we are nowhere. We are at standstill. If you can give me one name out of 1.6 billion Muslims that I can attach to the modern discoveries for the last 500 years, there is none. So, the first and foremost article of vision I propose are raise the understanding of our deen to higher intellectual levels and be the catalyst for a fresh look consistent with the advancement of human intellect over the last 500 plus years. Number two, institute conceptual level study of the Quran to fulfill main purpose of the holy book, and that is to inculcate in us higher consciousness of manifold relations, and I underline manifold relations with God and the universe. That is not just do's and don'ts in hell and heaven, but there are much more comprehensive relationships. Through these higher level studies, motivate and inspire our youth to be discoverers, innovators, researchers, and embrace the central objective of human existence, and go do something wonderful for the betterment of fellow human beings, and be known for their intellect and the founders of next level of science. Define the underlying Islamic paradigm for our intellectual endeavors, research and discovery versus existing alternate paradigms to minimize the confusion and conflict that our youth faces every day. Second, women are also recipients of this intellect that I talked about and can be as or more intellectual. They live much closer to the issues and the problems. They are the mothers of the world. They must be encouraged to fully involve in the formulation of the vision and the execution of it. Third, ordinary people of the world are all good unless brainwashed politically or religiously. We all have the same aspirations, and we all are in the search of same truth. And you know, truth is absolute. We may follow different paths to get there, so there is no reason that we cannot all hurdle regardless of faith, gender, ethnicity, and learn from each other, collect common nuggets, and have some real juicy intellectual encounters. This was how it used to be in the early major universities in the Islamic world, such as Baitul Hikmah, House of Wisdom in Baghdad. The level and amount of intellectual work, scholarly work done then was amazing. Fourth, I'm afraid to say it, but let me say it anyway. Since the Middle Ages, when the schools of Muslim theology were completed, infinite advance has taken place in the domain of human thought, experience, and discoveries. It may be necessary to revisit and reconstruct Islamic theological thoughts and extend and continue the works of the pioneer Imams. Our holy book is universal for all times. It not only encourages but demands human intellectual advancement. How we comprehend the Quran cannot stay stationary with the advancing human intellect and awareness of workings of the universe. Comprehension by a human living in the jungles of Amazons where he can barely see the sky, and by another person who has set foot on the surface of the moon just cannot be the same. I think it is about time the comprehension of our religion deserves a fresh look. Last, we must take full advantage of newest communication technologies for collaborative undertakings locally and internationally. There are highly placed contemporary scholars all across the world who can be part of our intellectual endeavors. We are living within physical borders, but for information and knowledge flow, there are no borders anymore. We must also stay current with our information delivery methods for the sake of our youth. In conclusion, I feel that we, the American Muslims, are best situated, and Islam as a preeminent religious organization can make the difference and be at the center of intellectual undertakings and a source of authentic Islamic knowledge at multitude levels in collaboration with community at large and educational institutions, and set the course for next 25 years. So let's start today. As Sister Anne told me, I have some handouts which gives the references and several verses of the Quran, and it's a homework for you to go and ponder and contemplate, and when we meet next time we will have a quiz. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll remind you also on your programs, if you look over on the other side, our Phase 3 committee actually sat and pondered a lot of these thoughts and created these goals for the center, which we also have highlighted in the library. So you might want to take some time and look at some of those as well. So the heart and mind of the center, as we call it, is the Sharif Family Community Library. Sister Sarah Sharif has graciously accepted our invitation to share her and her family's vision on the role the library will play in the center.
Good evening. Salam alaikum. My name is Sarah Sharif. I am the daughter of Hazim and Sosir Sharif and the niece of Mahmoud and Hazim Sharif, for those of you who don't know me. I'm here to speak on behalf of my family about our vision for the Sharif Family Community Library, correct? But before I can speak about our vision, I really wanted to take the opportunity to talk about why my father and my uncles felt that it was important to contribute to the establishment of a library at Salam. My father and my uncles are the sons of Nasir al-Sharif, Allah yarhamu. Although I was never blessed with the opportunity to meet my grandfather Nasir, I've come to know him and love him based off of all the stories I've heard about him. He was a hardworking man, and his name continues to carry a weight of respect, especially within his hometown of Al-Khalil in Palestine. Many would assume that he was a highly educated man because he constantly spoke about education and told his children to go to school and try their hardest. But in fact, my grandfather was actually illiterate. He could not read and write. His childhood in Palestine was marked by his continuous dedication to working alongside of his father. And although he longed to attend school, he couldn't. It just wasn't accessible for him, unfortunately. As time went on, obviously schools came to pop up here and there within his city. But again, it was too late. He was happily married and had multiple children. He had his own business going, and so he couldn't go back to school and get his formal education. But at that point in his life, my grandfather made it his goal to ensure that all of his children went to school, that they would be educated, like a formal education, and that they would continue to strive for knowledge in the future. Alhamdulillah, I can confidently say that my grandfather was successful with that goal. All of his children went to school, many of them even graduated from universities. And in addition to that, his love for education and his passion for education has been passed on and ingrained within his children. Today, my father and my uncles continue to push us forward and tell us to go to school and continue after our bachelor's degree, which, by the way, Mom, I'll go back to school eventually soon. So anyway, in addition to influencing my siblings and I to go to school, my father and my uncles really want to contribute to the community, and they really want to help the community, and that's why we're at Salam. Aside from the personal aspect of establishing the library, my father and my uncles were motivated from Islam, of course. The first word revealed in the Quran was Iqra, read. So the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first ordered Muslims to read truly speaks about the importance of reading alone and pursuing knowledge. So to contribute to the library in Allah's name and in Allah's house is a blessing in and of itself. It benefits not only my family, but it also benefits far more people on so many different levels. So this leads me to our vision. Our vision is that the library will be utilized by all community members, Muslim, non-Muslim, the young, the old, anyone that wants to go to the library for research, someone who just wants to take a break and read a book. We would like the library to be an easy and convenient place to access for everyone. But our greater vision is that in the years to come, this library will expand, both in the items within the library and also the library itself. Maybe one day it can become a standalone building and will be recognized within Sacramento, within the state, and within the US even. I mean, we can be ambitious, right? We would like to see this library transform just like Salam has transformed. I mean, I remember coming to Salam as a child and it was only a trailer, and look at what it is today. So with that hope, like I said, we really hope that this library can become something far greater. And even today, it's fantastic, and we're very, very excited about it. It's a vision that'll take time, but with the tightly knit, dedicated, and loyal community such as Salam's, we know that this vision can certainly become a reality one day. Thank you.
We now move into the academic emphasis. The next set of speakers are from both inside and outside our community, and they'll provide us the education perspective. Dr. Wendy D'Souza specializes in Islamic culture studies at Sacramento State University, and we're very excited that she's come here today to share her vision on how she sees the center could fit within the faculty use and student use.
Assalamu alaikum to everyone. Peace and blessings be upon you. My name is Wendy D'Souza, and I'm a lecturer in Islamic and Middle Eastern Studies at CSU Sacramento and UC Davis. I bet some of you might be alumni in this audience of those two institutions. I actually became interested in Islam and the Middle East in high school when other students and I had organized a walkout against the Gulf War in 1991. Long after serving some time in detention for civil disobedience, I was motivated to study Islam and Middle East in college, then graduate school, which took me to Egypt, and then Iran, which I know I saw some Iranians in the audience, and then Tajikistan. Since 2008, I've been teaching Introduction to Islam as a course that covers the basic tenets of the faith, as well as contemporary issues facing American Muslims. And I was actually very encouraged by the fact that with the budget cuts within the CSU system, the department that hired me said that out of all the courses that were cut, they really wanted to keep the Islam course, which really shows how much of a priority they felt teaching Islam was in this day and age. So in the 4 years that I've taught Introduction to Islam, I've taken my students here. I'm sure the staff is very well familiar with me by now. And I've also taken my students to other mosques in the area. My objectives for these visits have been rather straightforward. First, for students to have personal interactions and dialogues with Muslims outside of campus. 2, to foster a relationship between the university and Salam. And 3, to allow students to learn about religious practice and sacred spaces. So this experience has taught me a few things about how Salam can better serve students in our community. And based on these observations, I'd like to offer 3 suggestions, ideas for the future moving forward. First, there's a Persian saying that says, "A mountain will never reach another mountain, but a person can reach another person." And this is usually said in the context of reconciling with a difficult family member. However, I think this encapsulates what Salam is all about, which is a human-centered approach, not only to learning, but to building lasting relationships. So the first idea that I really thought about in preparing this speech is that my students usually look at Salam as an orthodox citadel of the Islamic community. And so most often when they come here, their real interest is learning about theology. So despite the many functions of Salam and my many protestations that this is more than a mosque, for my students, that's really what they want to learn about, and that's really what they want to experience. The prayer area, as well as learning about the deeper issues pertinent to the faith. So I thought that it would be best to have a knowledgeable staff on hand to be able to field such questions. I know the Imam is not always available for that, but to have personnel here to answer such questions, and even questions having to do with a broader social significance, like Islam's view of gender equality or homosexuality, what's Islam's view about that, or civil rights. So it's really important to have a knowledgeable staff on hand for that. Second, I think it would greatly benefit the goals of the Salam Center by establishing a youth internship program. I think maybe somewhat modeled after CARE. Those of you familiar with the CAIR, Council on American Islamic Relations. Thank you. So something like that. I think for young people, especially college students, to serve in that capacity, to be the face of the Islamic community to the larger Sacramento community would be very beneficial. Actually, I have a few students in the audience I see right now who've already actually acted in an informal capacity in that way. But to have people on hand, young people to maybe host question and answer sessions, conduct interfaith programs, basically help build the bridge between the university community and Salam, I think would be a really great legacy. My third and final point is less related to staff, but I just wanted to make a brief suggestion about creating a reading room. For those people who are uninitiated in Islam, who don't know much about it, it's a really comfortable and easy way to be introduced to the center, is to actually have an area where they can pick up magazines, periodicals, have very basic books on Islam, and maybe that to be independent from the very ambitious library that our great speaker talked about earlier. Let's see, and also just one last thing. I noticed that the field trips that I've had that had great success were the ones where Muslim students actually facilitated small group discussions and dialogues. So they actually were able to have a very direct kind of relationship with the students coming to learn about Islam. And over the past 4 years, my students have repeated over and over again that they appreciated the opportunity to speak, in one student's words, with real Muslims. So finally, in conclusion, there's been a number of obstacles in making these field trips happen. One is that the university sort of frowns upon bringing students to Salam from CSU Sacramento. They have to sign a whole bunch of liability waivers, and some students don't have transportation, so I've sort of packed students in my car. So I think transportation is difficult, also just liability. So more of my students have actually come independently on their own time, in an informal way. So on the whole, I feel really fortunate to be a part of this, deeply honored to be invited here this evening, and I just wanted to leave with a quote that I really feel encapsulates the soul of this place. And it's by Daisaku Ikeda, who's a peace activist. He says, quote, "A life lived without purpose or value is joyless and lackluster. On the other hand, to do, create, or contribute something that benefits others, society, and ourselves, and to dedicate ourselves as long as we live to that challenge, that is a life of true satisfaction, a life of value. It is a humanistic and lofty way to live." Thank you so much.
Professor Keith Atwater enthusiastically and without hesitation was the first to respond to our request to share his thoughts on how faculty and students can make use of the center. He has been a longtime friend of Salam, and I look forward to hear how he envisions the use of our center, or how he's already used our center, actually.
I bring you greetings from American River College. I'm sorry that President David Bayar couldn't be here tonight, so I'm here on behalf of the entire campus. Our college right across the street has always been more than just an institution that shares its parking lot with Salam on Juma prayer Fridays. It also turns out distinguished graduates like Imam Azeez and my former MSA club members, many of whom are in this room tonight. I teach humanities and religions at American River College. And let me share some true stories about our relationship between American River College and Salam. I'd like to suggest a metaphor that right out these doors is the crosswalk between us and Salam. It's a safe, wide, two-way path with a green light that ensures positive mutual contact. I first crossed that street and came here 6 years ago.
It's this way.
Across the street, this way. Thank you. I don't have my student tour guides to keep me from getting lost, but they're out there somewhere. 6 years ago, I came here for an emergency meeting when we had some hateful anti-Islam propaganda leaflets spread across our campus. Imam Azeez made it crystal clear to a room full of shocked and frightened Muslim students that they were ambassadors for their faith, the straight path, and that their role was to speak and act truthfully and diplomatically in a way that would bring our college campus together. It was hard work, and it is still hard work, and it is still ongoing work. One alumni and club officer who's here tonight gifted me with a remarkable work of scholarship, a hardback illustrated bilingual Quran with copious footnotes that I use regularly when I teach. I am pleased to note that scholarly Quran will be in the library for all to use. I crossed that street again with my MSA club members, and as a Christian with their kind guidance, made the prayers with them in your community. Imam Azeez has also been tireless with his time, crossing that street frequently, meeting the entire campus for interfaith programs and guest lectures. I remember him meeting the president at our 5-star student-run culinary arts restaurant, and then panicking when I found out that there might be some pork on the menu. A student waiter told me that the soup was, in fact, vegetarian, but it had some bacon. So I now envision regular visits by our culinary arts students and faculty to learn more about halal meats, about pork restrictions, and about other gourmet ethnic foods such as we enjoyed tonight. I envision students, staff, managers crossing that street frequently on a green light. Both the imam and the college police frown on jaywalking in ever-increasing numbers. Last year, over 50 faculty, staff, and managers crossed the street to attend guided tours here, led by my MSA Club alumni students. It was the most popular and most attended faculty training workshop of the year, I was told. I currently bring all my classes here for tours and send students to Salam's bookshop to purchase an English translation of the Quran and shop for other materials. Once an English professor asked me if he could take his class across the street, and I recall saying something like, well, of course, they've never said no. And this is so true. Salam, I like to rephrase that and say, Salam always says yes to any and all who wish to come here and learn and study and experience this community. I've watched this place with a bit of awe since my first tour of Phase 3 in a hard hat, as the building grew and blossomed with calligraphy, with art, with beauty, as well as with utility. And now a library and research center accessible to all students and faculty. Just a short walk from ARC. My metaphor suggests a two-way street. I recall a young Libyan student, a graduate of Bella Vista High School who wears hijab, when she joined my class for an extra credit tour of the Cathedral of the Blessed Sacrament. She spoke to me and told me how nervous she was about going into a church. Indeed, many have felt that way, my students coming to Salam for the first time, wondering what they're going to experience here. But you have graciously opened your doors to any and all, including Reverend Moran's community last Easter. And a Salam student taught me that the great Umayyad Mosque in Damascus once shared its space with Christians. So we've learned so much. It's a two-way street. When her classmates asked her about her headscarf and what she wore to the beach, she confessed that we don't go to the beach. So this exchange in friendship, mutual understanding, this is the green light. This is the crosswalk between ARC and Salam. One enthusiastic young Jewish student came to me a bit shaken after Imam Azeez's guest lecture on Israel and the Palestinians. He said, well, I asked the question. I'd never heard the Palestinian point of view, and I was surprised, but I learned. One last memorable experience, one morning one of my ex-student tour guides was late, and so after a cheerful wave and salam alaikum to the security guard, I led the tour. The building was wide open, unlocked, perfectly heated, air-conditioned, the lights on, spotless. I said to myself, what trust, what courage to have open access to College Oak Drive. I'm now trying to organize the church folks where I direct the music to come for a tour. They're rather skeptical about my idea of just leaving the front door of our church unlocked. Imagine the possibilities when there's a library, a reading room, a research center for all ages, high school students, community college students, university students. Even where I live, El Dorado County has a retired folks group discussion that is interested in coming to Salam. So in closing, let me just mention what I've prepared for tonight from the American River College catalog. Perusing our catalog, I found classes in anthropology, history, sociology, humanities, psychology, philosophy, art, literature, and yes, culinary arts. That you gain so much by those students walking over here across the street on that safe, wide path to your open and unlocked doors. So to the community that always says yes, I say thank you, and inshallah, we will always be crossing that street regularly for many years to come.
Our next friend from academia, in fact, is also one of our founding members. Dr. Amin Al-Mallah is the Dean Emeritus from California State University Stanislaus, and I know he will have some interesting thoughts to share with us about how he sees the center fits within the academic rubric.
Thank you, Anne. My views and vision for Salam for the next 25 years center on one simple suggestion, recommendation that I hope many of my colleagues take at heart. I think it is time to establish what I'm calling Salam Islamic Education Foundation. Education, learning, knowledge is a tall order. And with what Salam is doing in so many ways and so many activities and so many areas, I think it is time to have a separate organization, affiliated to Salam, of course, that will be, in fact, the Salam Islamic Education Foundation that would cut across not only California, but United States and even abroad, that will take this tall order to achieve and enhance the Islamic learning throughout the world. Specifically, I have, in terms of how the faculty and students, that's a question that I also decided to address, I have very simple 4 suggestions for the vision for what Salam can do in the next 25 years. Of course, under that new foundation that I'm proposing that we establish. And many organizations that, by the way, have done that, many religious, political, all kinds of organizations have found ultimately that it is good to have a foundation in charge of knowledge and learning and education as a separate affiliation with whatever organization they have. My 4 simple suggestions are: 1, yes, it is very important for people, American River College, other colleges, universities, to come to Salam. I think it is time to go to them. And I think it's more important to go to them than just sit here and waiting for them to come to us. And I'm very suggesting very few ideas there. One of the ideas you all hear about, like the art exhibit here on loan from somewhere, I think Salam can put an excellent Islamic learning and education collection. That collection could tour around the colleges and universities and schools around the area here. For example, 1 month at Sac State, 1 month at UC Davis, 1 month at American. That's where the best access. It could be displayed in the library of those universities. And Sac State, where I worked for many years, have that kind of activity, and I can facilitate that, where they invite all kinds of presenters, as well as book collections, as well as art, to their university. There are close to 30,000 students at Sac State. I don't think we'll ever have capacity to bring them here. But if we take that collection on loan to Sac State, there are again 30,000 plus at UC Davis and so on and so on. And I think over 20,000 at American River College and so on, Gonzales and Sacramento and Folsom. I think that's the time to do that. Have that collection, and that collection can be delivered to those universities and schools around the country. So we'll go to them rather than just wait for them to come to us here. My second suggestion is really a long run around the establishment and the advancement of Islamic scholars. There are many, many Islamic universities around the world now. I happened to visit the Islamic University in Medina when I was doing Hajj, and I saw a couple of other institutions in Mecca, and of course there are Al-Azhar University in Cairo. I think it's time for Salam to establish a way by encouraging students to go to those universities and become American scholars. I was really struck by the fact that a good number of these students, which by the way fully funded, they actually make money by being students at the Islamic University in Medina. I was really struck by the fact that how many of them are from the United States, none from California, but many of them are from the United States, New York, Texas, and so on. So that's my second idea. My third idea is to expand the Islamic knowledge beyond the field of humanities. Every time we talk about Islam, every time we talk about going to courses, and I think the professor from American River really alluded to that at the end. We need to develop knowledge, Islamic knowledge around the sciences, the social sciences, the humanities, the art. That art exhibit here is a good example of that. And all kinds of fields of studies. The Quran is filled with knowledge about astrology, about mathematics, about all kinds of fields, social science, social justice, humanities, relationship among people, sociology, psychology, and so on. I was really fortunate during the Hajj to have read for the first time in my life the Quran from the front to the end. And I was really amazed by the amount of knowledge in the Quran, not just about obeying God and fearing God, but about the sciences, the sociology, the ecology, the mathematics, the astrology, and so on. I was really struck with that. And my last and final suggestion and presenter, I think it's time to again establish Islamic resources available to the community and eventually to the nation and the world. And I think a beginning point there, I think we had it like 10, 15 years ago, but I kind of faded away. Some sort of an Islamic speaker with a booklet that would contain all the presenters, all the speakers that can address various issues of Islam, beyond the humanities again, in the sciences as well, that can be deposited and distributed to all local area schools and universities, where they can basically, a professor at any university or school or a teacher can open it and say, I want someone to speak on this subject, here's the person, phone number, email, and everything, and address that person and have that. And ultimately, I think Salam should put everything is done in writing, so it become available to everyone else. And I spoke with Mutwalli about that idea a couple of times, and I hope maybe, God will, I live enough, long enough to come start that idea of having, in fact, everything, bylaws, Salam structure, organization, and so on, and have that available to all kinds of Islamic organizations in the United States. They can implement. I think Salam is a great organization that can be easily covered and be easily advanced in many other communities like Kunaba, Vakabin, and so on. Thank you very much.
And now a view from one of our students, someone who will actively use the center and for whom we will try to have specific programs. Sister Ria Ali has been a long-time presence here at Salam, and when she's not working hard at the weekend school, and even when she is, she's studying hard. I look forward to hearing her thoughts on how she would like to see or how she envisions the center serving students.